Hello, everybody. This is Eric. Um, I'm in recovery, and we've been doing a little, um, I guess, live stream about how to get through the steps. As a reminder, I'm not speaking for any 12-step group per se. Um, but I do think that the principles work really well if we refer, and I tend to like essaying. Um, I thought tonight, well, first of all, I want to apologize for not having scheduled any streams. It turns out a lot of things have happened with my mother and my wife's mother. They both have been really struggling health-wise. I won't go into all that, but we just had to leave and go be at other places. So I've had to just not be able to do this. But we scheduled another live stream for Thursday. We'll talk about 8 and 9. But I just wanted to answer some questions our viewers have had. Um, Probably the biggest one involves honesty, involves being honest with family members. It is a delicate issue. Um, I think it's something that requires prayer. You use the rest of the steps. You use steps 1, you're admitting powerless over your life. 2 is believe that God will help you. 3, you turn your whole will and life over to the care of God. So from there, you're asking God to actually help you know what to do with sharing with family members. Um, I think a couple of principles. One is, does this person really need to know this information? If you're in a relationship, I think it's really important that they know. People will go, well, and I'm pretty tough on this when I'm working with people, but they say, well, if I share with them, it'll hurt them. And I say, well, you know what? Doing the behaviors is what hurt them. And then not telling them about it is um, more hurtful, even though they don't know what's going on. You can't have a really close relationship if you're still dishonest. And the program all falls apart with dishonesty. With a spouse or a loved one, boyfriend, girlfriend, it's probably wise to involve a sponsor or a therapist or someone who really knows how to help guide this process. Sometimes it's better to not share everything. And so then how do we know we're trying to protect ourselves versus really help them? Anybody else, if you run it by them, could help you sort that out. Our best thinking got us into this mess. So I think it's important not to trust our thinking on this. So yeah, that's about honesty. And obviously, if there's something where you put their physical health in danger, you got to let them know. But I'll say that the people I work with, probably once a month, I'm running into someone who just can't share with a spouse. They want to do all this step work, and I'm not sure. I've never seen anybody really get sober that way. Um, can I show this? I think I can show this. I had a friend who I worked with 5 years. I wouldn't do it again, but 5 years, and he just didn't want to be honest with his spouse. And it's like that was a waste of sponsorship. This is when I did things the slow way. So anyway, um, any of our viewers, they're welcome to. It's okay to put up questions here in the comments section. Um, I'll talk about this. The severity of one's acting out, while it may have huge consequences for a person, doesn't necessarily mean they can't recover. In fact, sometimes I think they recover better or quicker because they're at the edge of the cliff. They're so close to having horrible, catastrophic situations. The motivation is there. Sometimes the people that have what we'll call the mild addiction, um, they don't do as well. They just don't do as well because they just don't see the need to take all this very seriously. Um, Another question that comes up is, do you have to bottom out? Like, do you really have to get really, really bad to recover? And this was asked of some of the early members of AA, and they didn't think you had to go all the way down to the bottom of the barrel. Of course, you could, in semantics, say, well, that was their bottom. They just couldn't take it anymore. But I think you can pray, God, please save me from this going down any worse. I think we can always pray to have God help us right where we are and just help us. I will say I don't like the phrase. I have people, if you've been around meetings and program for about 30 years, you kind of develop some biases. You hear this phrase where people who are chronic slippers, they call them. And if you do this 12 steps as they were met, you're not going to have that experience most likely. But say like you are, they would say phrases like, well, I don't want to work with you. Go out and experiment some more and then contact me when you're enough of that. I think that's awfully rough. Just as my experience is that the people that are still wanting to come to a meeting or call you on the phone, there's something in them that wants help. Now, if you're just talking about everything under the sun, but not about recovery, that's a different story. But if that person wants help, I don't think it's wise to go out and experiment more. I think it's better to be clawing your way to recovery, even though you get no traction in this. And it's because of self-will, or there's something missing. You just won't make an amends. You won't surrender your full life to God, or you have a challenge with a higher power. Like it's hard to know, when you may not have a relationship with God, then how do you start one? Because I've seen people like that. They are trying not to hit bottom. They keep on trying in their own strength. And eventually they'll give up, hopefully. I pray for them. I pray that we all come to the end of ourselves so that we can really start to believe in God and to trust in His power and not our own. It seems like every week I'm reading some cool thing that relates to recovery. This is an Orthodox Christian magazine that's quite old, 1989. In this, evidently, there was some translation of some ancient Christian writing on how to recover from lust. And I find it very fascinating to realize how things do really relate. So I thought I would share this. And some of this is a little bit, not Old English because it was translated into English, but translations are interesting. This would have been from Saint Barsanuphius. And John, the 6th century desert fathers. So we're talking 500s. And these are random questions that they'd ask these holy fathers. And so here it goes. There are just certain things that just jump out. Where is the cutting off of your will in everything? If in one thing you cut off your will, but not in something else, then it is clear that even in that in which you cut off your will, you had another will of your own. For he who submits in everything, and such a one is not full of care for his salvation, because another answers for him, he to whom he gave himself in submission, and to whom he entrusted himself. And so if you wish to be saved, and live in heaven and on earth, keep this, and I will answer for you, O brother. Or if you will be negligent, then see to it to yourself. So it's so fascinating. I'm reading this book and a completely different book called The Way of the Ascetics by Tito Colliander. I'm not necessarily recommending this. book. It's not a bad book to get. It's just very interesting. It's out of Finland. And it's kind of like I kind of realize God may be speaking to me when I'm reading something over here, and it's the exact same thing over here. So for instance, this guy in one little chapter was talking about what benefit is if you pick and decide what you're willing to give up. So he says you may fast and pray, but then overindulge in TV or overindulge in this or that. You may be so pious and not, over here trying to look good with your speech, but then over here you end up gossip. So I think the point in all this and how it really relates to recovery is that one really has to get a big view of things and pray for a healthy view of things. Because we're all blind. We only see what we see, and we can get so focused on this that we don't realize what's going on. So for instance, the most common one I see in recovery is that people may be wanting to give up one part of sexual addiction, but not the other. So I don't want to get graphic here, but they go, well, I don't want to do the heavy duty stuff that would get me in trouble with the law, but I'm just going to do stuff by myself. It's like, well, I'm not sure you're really going to get well. Or I want to smoke marijuana and drink alcohol. Okay, I'm not sure you're going to get well. That as you're pushing down something over here, something else pops up over there. And the idea is an addict doesn't want to feel feelings. They don't want to really be sober. Well, the addiction makes us not want to be sober. What is sobriety? Sobriety is being in touch with reality. People go, really? Well, if you look it up, it's really to be sober-minded means to be in touch with reality, to not be inebriated in this life. If one looks at how the word sober is used in the Bible, it says, be sober-minded and knowing what the will of the Lord is. It doesn't mean, hey, don't just act out today, or just don't get drunk, or don't get high on marijuana. Yeah, no, it's about being vigilant and to be aware. And so awareness will kill this disease. It's part of it. So we pray for awareness. We start to come to our senses. We start to senses, like we feel, we see things as they are, we hear things as they are. We're in touch with reality. Inebriation, I don't want to be in touch with reality. I don't want to feel feelings. I don't want to hear what's really going on or see what's really going on. So clarity, we pray for clarity, for awareness, really a big thing here. Going to this book, it says, what do the words you have spoken mean? See to it lest you be drawn away by a thought of sexual sin. Again, you can translate this into your own context, but I think it's very valuable to see what these early Christians said. It says, this happens not only with regard to sexual passion, but in other cases also. The mind is subjected to this as a consequence of distraction. And when this happens, a man should cry out to himself, saying, O Lord, forgive me for the sake of thy holy name. I have been subjected to this for my negligence. Deliver me from distraction and every net of the enemy, for thine is the glory unto the ages. Amen. And let the following be in you the sign by which you may know that you are drawn away. So this is a very interesting thing here. It says, if when one is speaking with others and his mind is distracted here and there, it happens that when he speaks of one thing, his thought passes over to something else. This is what it is to be drawn away. Likewise, if anyone is doing something and passes over in thought to something else, in his forgetfulness, he either ruins what he is doing or does something more than necessary. And then this is likewise a case of being drawn away. So we get that that sounds like ADD or something. And it sounds like something we probably struggle with in this life, that if I'm talking with you and my mind's thinking of the pizza I'm going to eat later, that's distraction. Or if I'm working on a project and my mind's distracted and then it's like, oh my gosh, I burned the pizza because I was too busy with distraction of something else. So our minds are constantly bouncing around, not really focused on anything. And if one really, and I found this really important for me, is if I'm focusing on trying to overcome sexual sin or some kind of passion, I have to every day pray, God, please help me to be aware of this. Help me to work throughout the day on this, that would be my goal. It's so funny how our goals can be everything else. Hey, I need to get this done. I need to make money. I need to do this. And it's like, but I'm going to die someday. And this is sobering. And I'm going to have to give an account for my life. And either I've used this life for my repentance to overcome this, or I haven't. That would be sobriety. But again, our culture tries to insulate us from death. We don't want a funeral. We don't want a dead body. We don't want to see the burial. Let's just cremate. Let's have a happy celebration of their life. So I think that's not reality. And when I remember going to a funeral where this kid had died, and wow, this is powerful. When you see how a young person lying in the coffin and all their friends saw this person, they were hysterical. But what it did do is give us all a sobering reality of this is where it's going to end up, even though it feels like spiritually in this life we'll never end up there, but we can count on dying. And that really helps with sobriety. That if I knew I was going to die a month from now, where would my thoughts be? Would I be distracted? Probably not. Probably not at all. I would be focused on, I have a job. So you can do this. So he's talking about distraction. So here we're actually getting to another part of this. So it says, likewise, if in the same way, a sexual thought draws us away. It happens that one is conversing with another, and if the enemy succeeds in drawing his mind away from God-pleasing sobriety, then as a consequence of distraction, a sexual desire appears in the mind. And this is likewise a drawing away, because it has happened not from reflection or remembrance, but a man is drawn away by it out of forgetfulness. And such a one is like a traveler who, by reason of grief that comes upon him, goes away from the straight road and finds himself on another road. So by way of grief, if you didn't catch that. But coming back to himself, a man should call out to himself according to what has been said above and hasten to God's mercy. Let God have mercy on me. We probably have talked about a prayer called the Jesus Prayer, which could be useful. The Lord is merciful and will accept him like a prodigal son. We know with what mercifulness he accepts the latter. But when this warfare arises in the mind, even without distraction, one must be sober, not take enjoyment of such thoughts, nor tarry in them, meaning linger long, but all the sooner hasten to God his master. So the idea is that if you're living your life, you're busy doing what you're doing, and in theory, you would be really focused on God and the steps, focused on how do I find God's power? How do I stay sober by just following these steps in faith? It's not like trying not to lust today. That's the problem. that doesn't really work in my experience. And so many people in meetings, not to put down meetings, but that's what they're focused on is trigger management. This is much more not backing away. If this is less backing away, it's turning your back on it and just running towards recovery. And if you focus on that one day at a time, you will get better. That's my experience. It may be faster for some, slower for others, but even in the process, you'll have moments of peace as you take inch by inch closer to God and love. And because any addiction really is a fake facsimile of wanting peace, serenity, basically God. And that's why the addiction exalts itself, gives you pleasure, and makes you think that this is a solution. But in the end, it doesn't work. So being clear-minded, understanding it's not the time to be distracted, stay narrow focused. I hear I'm saying two things in one meeting here. Narrow focused on I want God, I want sobriety, I want peace, love, freedom from these things. But broad view, if I'm praying and saying, God, please show me myself, help me see the whole picture. So the whole picture would be, am I eating well? Am I fasting if I need to fast? Am I sleeping? What are the things that could be triggering me? What are now this sounds like triggering management, but really you do it from a 12-step point of view. The triggers usually are going to be something where I'm disturbed. And the AA book says when I'm disturbed, there's some person, place, or thing unacceptable to me. And I can find no sobriety, or no serenity rather, until I accept that person, place, or thing as it's supposed to be. And we understand that nothing really happens in God's world by accident. It doesn't mean he wants these things to happen, but reality is he knows everything that's going to happen. So why wouldn't I hold on to him and have him help me through whatever difficult time moves ahead? So I'm going to try to find, so the cool news is these old magazines are on a place called archive.com. No, archive.org, which is amazing how much is on there. This is issue number, Orthodox Word number 147, and it's 1989. I'm going to try to put a link in there, and you can download it for free. It's very interesting reading. And what's fascinating is he's using words like sobriety in terms of sexual passion. Like, that's a long time ago. To be using those words. So they did see that sex might have been inebriating and that it could draw us away. And we can't do anything except by God's grace. So you can't just say, okay, I'm going to really, 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 really focus. You do your part. God helps with the rest. The other thing I wanted to share is something called TableMate. I picked up a smaller version of TableMate at a garage sale. I didn't even know what it was. Turns out it was a 12-step format done back in 1940s. What was the original? And I use this a lot. It was a way to get through the steps, and they used like little discussion number 4, inventory and restitution. So that's kind of what we're doing here is I'm taking you through discussion 5. So it would be a way to do this. I would say it's the 1940s. The one I had looked like it was the 1940s. Then I realized you can buy this. Okay. Notice how small it is. It's pretty packed. So I'm going to read some things. This is the very beginning where it's called admission. And not everything fits sexaholism, but I think a lot of it does. Suggested test questions. So these are questions that have been used. The first one is, do you require a drink the next morning? So I'm going to use words like act out to keep it broad and specific sounding for sex addiction. Do you require to act out in the morning? Do you prefer to act out alone? That's so weird. Well, it is a lonely situation, and healthy sexuality would have been involved a spouse and would have been used towards procreation of a family, but now it's so isolating. Is acting out harming your family in any way? And that's something to really ask yourself. Because we go, well, it's not harming anybody because they don't know about it. Yeah, no. If anything, it's blocking your prayers or blocking who you could really be as a person. Do you crave acting out at a definite time daily? Again, the original question is, do you crave a drink at a definite time daily? Do you get the inner shakes unless you act out? Has acting out made you irritable? Does acting out make you careless of your family's welfare? Have you harmed your husband or wife since acting out? Has acting out changed your personality? There is this aspect that before acting out, before addiction, people felt so much more innocent, so much more clean. I'm not trying to make people feel bad, but there is this sad aspect that after this has touched one's life, they just feel miserable. I mean, the good news is you can get sober and then your life begins to go to that better feeling. And then pretty soon you just never want to give that up. You're so thankful. Your worst day, your worst nightmares of dealing with tragedy and grief. But if you're sober, you can be so thankful that you have that connection with God. And when I say sober, I mean, now here's the thing. If one's working a good program, they go, well, am I sober with food? Am I sober with TV? Or am I numbing myself? So we do what we can do to be aware of. And you could, that's why I like these kind of lists here, because they help us keep in check. Does acting out cause you to be restless? Does acting out cause you bodily complaints? Does acting out cause you to have difficulty sleeping? People go, well, I sleep better after, but it's like the reality is you may have trouble without it. Has acting out made you impulsive? That is like not thinking ahead. Do you have less control since acting out? Has your initiative decreased since acting out, like your ambition, healthy ambition to do something? Has your ambition decreased since acting out? Do you lack perseverance in pursuing a goal since acting out? Now, this is funny. Do you drink to obtain social ease? So that probably doesn't fit. Do you drink for self-encouragement? I don't know if that fits. This is interesting. Do you drink or act out to relieve marked feeling of inadequacy? Many, many people I know feel very inadequate as a person, as someone who would find them attractive, would find them someone they want to share their life with. Acting out steals your self-confidence, it just makes you feel miserable. And so it gives you the fake sense of connection, but you're not really ever going to connect with someone as long as you're doing that. It's taking you away from someone who you could share your life with. The good news, get sober and that could change. Um, has your sexual potency suffered since drinking? In this case, you could just put acting out. Many people have said this has not enhanced their sex life. Do you show marked dislikes or hatreds since drinking? I think that means like you start to get very black and white and you hate this and you think that's good. It starts to make us negative. Has your jealousy in general increased since acting out? I've known people, and it's the strangest. Well, I shouldn't judge. I'm not judging. It's just a strange phenomenon. They come in. They're usually a male, and they're very insecure about how their wife may be cheating on them when all the while they're cheating on their wife. But they don't see it as cheating. They think that looking at porn is not cheating. So we talk about that, and then they start to get clarity, and then they realize, wow, this is messed up. She could be faithful, but he's projecting his guilt onto her, which gives him a sense of entitlement. Has drinking or acting out made you more sensitive? So it doesn't take much to bother you. You get very, very sensitive here. Are you harder to get along with since being an addict? Now, this is a common one for any addiction. Do you turn to an inferior environment during acting out? So for drinkers, this would be they would never think about going to this bar, or I mean, they start drinking with inferiors, they call it. It sounds bad because it sounds like a level system, but it's like I would never spend time with these people unless we were drinking. So acting out can take you to places you just never thought you would be there, and really important to recover. Has acting out endangered your health? I'm gonna try to see if I can do something here. Has acting out affected your peace of mind? Is acting out making your home life unhappy? Has acting out jeopardized your business? Is acting out clouding your reputation? Is acting out disturbing the harmony of your life? So this is interesting. This is for alcohol, so there's 35 questions. Then they leave 5 at the end. And this is, they just decided, it says, in addition to the test questions, we in AA would even have more questions. So these questions originally came from Johns Hopkins University back a long time ago. AA adds 5 more. Have you ever had a complete loss of memory while or after drinking or acting out? Some people do, but most people can remember it. Have you ever felt when or after acting out an inability to concentrate? Have you ever felt remorse after acting out? Has a physician ever treated you for drinking in this case? Have you ever been hospitalized for sex addiction, maybe? It says if you've answered yes to any one of these questions, you're probably a sexaholic. If you answered 2 of these test questions, chances are that you are an alcoholic. If you answered 3 or more of the test questions, you are definitely an alcoholic. That's kind of cute how they do that. No question pertaining to drinking or stopping drinking is silly or irrelevant. The matter is too serious. Okay, but this is what I was going to get to here. Why does an alcoholic drink? Or in this case, why does a sexaholic engage in lust? Having this, and I'm just going to translate it into the word sexaholic and just adjust it rather than go back and forth here. Having decided that we are sexaholics, it is well to consider what competent mental doctors consider as the reasons why a sexaholic uses. 1, an escape from situations of life which he or she cannot face. Escape. 2, an evidence of a maladjusted personality, including sexual maladjustments. So that's fascinating. It's right there. And so, of course, it's sexual maladjustments because we're talking about sexaholism. That is not fun to listen to. A maladjusted personality, I think all of us would like to feel like normal. But if we're going to go through the steps, we're going to learn that the steps are about a character defect. This is a character problem. We have problems being honest. We have problems being selfish. We have problems being fearful, chronically fearful, and resentful. So, don't lose heart. We're going to talk about recovery. A development from social drinking to pathological drinking. So in this case, from the guy who just seems normal, I'm a normal man, I may look at women, to pathological coping mechanism. 4, a symptom of a major abnormal mental state. So maybe anxiety, depression could be linked with this. I tend to think that the addiction is the cause of this, but there are people that might have had depression, anxiety underneath. An escape from incurable physical pain. Oh, I work with physical pain and chronic pain, and I see a lot of people get better when they feel the feelings. So when I hear incurable, that sounds horrible. There are people that do act out because they have physical pain. They're using like self-medicating. 5 or 6, because of basic feelings of an inferiority, emotional instability, a sick personality. A person who lusts because he likes lust, knows he cannot handle it, but does not care, possesses a sick personality, and is considered emotionally unstable. Yeah. 7, usually one cannot pinpoint any glaring reason why the sexaholic lusts. In most cases, it is more than a suspicion that the lust is consumed to relieve a vague restlessness or boredom. I hear that a lot. The liquid escape or the lust escape temporarily lessens the conflict between physical and emotional networks and ordinary strains of life. Yeah. The above are general reasons. It says where the individuality or personality of the sexaholic is concerned, these reasons may be divided as follows. 1, now this is the one that I just get a kick out of this whole book. A self-pampering tendency which manifests itself in a refusal to tolerate, even temporarily, unpleasant states of mind, such as boredom, sorrow, anger, disappointment, worry, depression, dissatisfaction, and feelings of inferiority and inadequacy. Quote, I want what I want when I want it, end quote, seems to express the attitude of many sexaholics towards life. The AA book tells us that selfishness is the root of our troubles. The self-pampering is interesting because to be pampered is part of the problem. And if we go, okay, so to get sober, I need to get rid of pampering. And if you go back to the early church Christian writers, they talk about this, like fasting would just help you to say no to certain foods. And again, you would want to understand how they saw fasting. It was certain foods, not a strict fast where you're not eating anything. But if you start there to say no to yourself. Now, can we do this in our own strength? No. But just this process, just going through the steps is not self-pampering. That's for sure. Do I go to meetings and not essay per se, but other meetings where it's talking about self-pampering? Yes. Oh, it's just unfortunate advice. They're talking about what I call bubble baths and chocolates. It's like you need to do self-care, self-love, take care of yourself, find other ways to pamper yourself, and then you won't act out. And it's like no, that's adding, it's adding more fuel to the fire here. I will say this: recovering addicts, once they understand they don't have to be self-pampering, they can tolerate, even temporarily, unpleasant states of mind, panic, disappointment, sorrow, pain, disgust, even shame, guilt, um, worry. And not that I'm encouraging these things, but you can feel them. It's not going to kill us. Once you get that, you'll develop more of an emotional immune system that's able to handle things. Addiction is like the pampering. If you pamper a child, then what happens is they never grow up. They can't be strong and tough. And we're not tough in our own strength, but we're tough in God. But we learn to go, no, I can do this while being sober. And I get choked up when all the addicts I've worked with, regardless of what they struggle with, they will say, well, I did childbirth without any medication because I'm a recovering opiate addict. Or I've had to endure these insults, everything, but I was sober. And they really, they come out the other end not proudful, but they come out the other end with satisfaction to know God's real, that God helped them, that they can do this. Once you do that enough, you realize you just don't have to run to the nearest donut shop or go spend something online or go run and do this, that sexually. You just don't. By the way, we're not alone. There's a lot of, this is my opinion, there's a lot of people that do this self-pampering, and they may not even identify as an addict. But if we live in America, I think we're almost catered to this kind of idea. Okay, that I'm not happy enough, and please help me be happy. Okay. Two, an instinctive urge for self-expression unaccompanied by determination to translate the urge into creative action. Well, that sounds healthy, but how does this fit? It's weird. There are people, I shouldn't say it's weird, but it sounds funny. It's like sexuality is procreative. It has to do with creative energy. And so sometimes it can go very perverse and in the dark side. But the thing is, I think we have an instinctive urge to express ourselves, to share what's really on our hearts, to really make a connection with God and human beings. And it gets expressed, but it's off the subject. It's totally missing the mark. And so, yeah, if you can find through God's grace a way to be creative in a non-sexual way, and it's not about habit replacement, but that can actually help. This is another one, an abnormal craving for emotional experiences, which calls for removal of intellectual restraint. Again, now this was written to alcoholics. So, an abnormal craving for an emotional experience, like I want to feel my feelings, but I'll be drunk while doing this. And I need to have no limits. I don't need my intellectual self saying, gee, I could add a V8. No, I want the Bloody Mary. Or I want to have no limits on my behavior. I want to be free. Yeah, it's a fake sense of freedom. But I think addicts in recovery can relate to this. Let's see here. A tendency to flinch from the worries of life and to seek escape from reality by the easiest means available. Again, think fantasy. No, well, don't fantasize, but think about it. Fantasy is an escape from reality. And a lot of sexaholics escape reality. In fact, I heard someone say that. I'm not sure I believe this, but it's an interesting thought. He said that sex addicts tend to be smarter. He says that intellectuals, they're in books and they don't want to harm their body, so to speak, with drugs and alcohol. But I've seen a lot of smart drug addicts and smart alcoholics, and it doesn't stop them from using. And I've seen, well, I tend to see less. I don't really see. I will say this. I think it's proper. Sexaholics tend to be intellectuals. They tend to live in their heads. They tend to fantasize, and so to be out of there and into your body in a healthy way, like feel the temperature. Like I'm shivering in this room because I have air conditioning. It's probably 90 outside, but I can't wait to get out there and thaw. But that's feeling one's feeling rather than living in a head. Most of the feelings we feel are in our gut here, so we want to avoid that. That's why sometimes overeating is what we do. This is another style of sex addiction. And think an alcoholic can get self-confident by drinking, and then he becomes the life of the party. His social fears begin to go away. It's like, I'll call this the social lubricant. An insistent craving for feeling a self-confidence, calm and poise that some obtain temporarily from alcohol. Are there sexaholics that use sexuality to try to create this faux sense of self-confidence with the opposite sex? I wonder about that, because they're avoiding the real things that make we all feel insecure. I think we all feel insecure. We all feel inadequate. We all feel lonely. We all feel like that fear of rejection. All that addiction does is make it feel like you're not being rejected because you're interacting with something video or printed page or another person who's broken too. And so it's all really kind of fake, so. Well, I've bent your ear a bit. Hopefully this is helpful. Thursday night, we'll be doing steps 8 and 9. And I think my plan is sometime for the weekend to start on 10 and 11. So with that, you guys take care. Have a great day in recovery. Bye-bye.